surprised at this resurge of interest in a life which has been documented?
Well, it has been documented and it hasn't been documented. People often ask me my opinion about things, so you get my answers according to your questions. But when you write an autobiography, you can say what's really in your heart about things you're very passionate about. So I think there is a difference.
And have you learnt through the public documenting? Have you learnt you added some things to this new edition? Have you found you've gone back and changed things?
Yes, because I thought it'd be easy, but it's not easy because the second edition I wrote 12, 13 years ago, and so when I looked at it, I thought, I don't think like that anymore. We've moved on. I don't care about that anymore. There are other things that have captured my attention. So it wasn't easy, but it's a good experience to think back over things you've done in your life, and try and sort of give them some meaning and make them of interest to people who do you the honour of picking up your book to find out what makes you tick.
And you keep adding things to your life. You seem to find more things to do every year.
Well, life's for living. You're only here once, so why waste a minute?
And the most important thing to you now, at this moment in your life?
The Bendigo Writers Festival.
Thank you. Keep signing. What did you think when you started out? I remember Tippington Knot all those years ago.
You remember that? You go back that far?
I go back that far.
Yes,
Here we are now with a couple of Miles Franklin Awards and extraordinary interest in your work, and you're a Castlemaine writer, I must add as well. You're a local. That journey, have you seen much change in Australian publishing?
Enormous, vast. When the Tippington Knot was written, it was highly admired by readers in Australia, readers for publishers and by publishers, but no one could publish it because it was set in the UK. It was apparently about hunting stags in the West Country. It wasn't really. It was one of my themes that I was working on. But I had to publish another book here set in Queensland before I could get that one out. In fact, I had to win the Miles Franklin for the Ancestor game before the Tippington Knot came out in Australia. It was published in the UK and imported here. About 6 copies, I think. One for each reviewer.
But your writing has changed a fair bit over those years too.
Of course, yeah, my hair colour. I've just let it go a natural grey. And
do writers get better as they get older?
Not all of them. Some of them die young, and that's a bad thing.
So what I'm hearing is you should get better.
I don't know. I mean, for me, I started late, and I think I've got better. And I don't have any doubt that Autumn Lang's the best book I've written. And it had an avalanche of exuberant reviews around the country and overseas. So, which is not being reflected in prizes so far. But that's another world. There are 3 worlds. There's 4. There's the world of the readers and what they do with your book, and there's the world of the academics and what they do with it. Your world of festivals. Yeah, they're kind of discreet. One of the strange things is they tend to float in their own juice. I was going to say something else, but juice. Maybe there's a kind of stew. We're all in it. The writing stew.
And you, every now and then, come out of that writing stew, and you come to places like this. How lucky are we that you've just had Autumn Lang, and that it's a perfect timing for the first Bendigo Writers Festival. I know you're a great favourite of Bendigo. You come here fairly regularly, give us your time. But the Writers Festival, how do you think this is going to work for our region? For the
fantastic! Region? It'll work brilliantly. Of course, they always do. I mean, when they're well organised, and you've got a good mix of local writers and writers who aren't local. I won't say from outside. They're not really from outside, but I mean they're part of, usually most of them are the Australian scene. It always works really well. I just got back from Byron on Tuesday, I think, or Monday, I'm not sure. But I was up there last weekend anyway. And it's one of the greatest festivals in the country. And yet it's in a bunch of tents or on a bit of what used to be hippie land.
Gorgeous bit of land.
And it's packed, absolutely packed every time you go there. So, no, it will happen for sure.
I might ask you a hard question to finish. You're not that fond of doing this part of you'd rather be writing, I think, wouldn't you, Alex? But how do you think that you have improved, or do you enjoy coming out to talk to people like this?
I dread it before it happens, but touch wood, I enjoy it when it happens. Like, especially if you've got a full house, and I always feel, well, the enemy's not here, and the people are there to hear you. They're usually readers or would-be readers, or just faintly interested. Yeah, I mean, it's okay on the day. I enjoy it on the day.
Thank you,
I
Alex.
think stand-up comedians are a similar bunch.
A similar bunch. Thanks very much, Alex. Welcome to Bendigo.
Great to be here.
Fantastic to have you at our inaugural Writers Festival, the very, very first one. So it's a bit historic, and I know you're a bit of a collector of interesting moments in history.
Yes, I think I've done every single year of the Williamstown Writers Festival, all 9 years. They can't start without me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's lucky you have so many books.
I'm an easy lay, really.
You are an easy print. It's lucky you print so many books.
There's always something to talk about.
There is always something to talk about.
Always.
I'm suspecting that you're a little bit over talking about The Office.
I always think that I am, but once I get going, I'm all right.
Ah.
Yeah, particularly if the person's read it, which of course you can't always guarantee, but if they have, I think they're always kind of intrigued to see just how much you can do with the topic, and it's fair to say that I was pretty amazed with that as well. I thought it would be a pretty straightforward book to do, and of course it just multiplied and complicated and intrigued and beguiled all the way to 200,000 words.
Well, that's one of those books that you will probably have a long life. Is that right?
Well, I hope so. Yeah, it certainly had a long life in my head. I've probably been thinking about it for the last 10 years. You know, I've always been fascinated by works of fiction and film and theatre set in offices, and I've always been interested in people's relationship to work and my own relationship to work, because I love work. Work is great fun for me. And I think people do achieve a lot of their self-definition through work. I know I certainly do. So I'm sensitive to those kind of themes and those kind of motivations. I aim to be one of the few fathers who doesn't write a book on fatherhood. But no, look, I'm a journalist, and journalists are, you know, necessarily sort of eclectic, and they're existential tourists. We get enormously interested in one subject, then we finish it and throw it over our shoulder and move on to the next one. And the other thing about being a journalist is that you're kind of addicted to publication. You're kind of outcome-oriented, not process-oriented. You're constantly interested in finishing projects which free you to go on to the next one, and also to learn the lessons of the last one. I learned a bit about writing, I learned a bit about myself as a writer while I was doing The Office, and that in some ways was one of the reasons why I did the book. I wanted to see if I could do a book like that, having not done one before.
And because you've done so much, and had your reputation is very strong in certain kinds of writing, did that enable you to go to a publisher and convince them?
Yeah, a little, yeah. I wouldn't want to have been getting started with a subject like this. There was, from the publishers who I spoke to, a kind of a belief that I could get it done, perhaps a greater belief, stronger belief than I had myself. I was interested to find out whether the book was possible. And it is an unusual book because these days, I think in Australian non-fiction, we've become quite parochial. We are very wedded to this idea of Australian writers do Australian subjects for Australian readers. And it's very seldom that an Australian non-fiction writer tackles a genuinely global subject. Generally speaking, we rely on non-fiction culture being imported from overseas when it's something of international moment.
And of course, your next global subject is Shane Warne.
It is, yeah.
Are you ready to talk about that?
It's quite global. It's going to be published in England and India and South Africa as well as Australia. Of course. And the chances are he is the best known Australian in the world, frightening as that may be. He's probably known to more people than any other Australian, just simply because it's interesting to sort of contemplate him on reflection and in hindsight. And in fact, it sort of dawned on me, I was conscious of this while he was playing, but it's dawned on me ever more clearly that I've been very fortunate to live through the Warne era. In fact, I think my whole my whole cricketing understanding has been calibrated on the world of Warne.
Wow.
You know, it's interesting. I grew up in the 1980s. Everyone talked about leg spin, but you never really saw it. You never saw it at its highest possible calibre. Well, now I've seen leg spin and I've seen the benchmark for it, and I don't think that we'll ever get anyone quite as good. We're likelier to see a new Bradman than we are a new Warne.
Yes, it's astonishing, isn't it? So it is a cricketing book?
It's a cultural book, but it comes back to Warne as a cricketer, because I don't think that... I think perhaps because we saw so much of Warne in his career. You know, his whole career was televised. We were eyewitnesses to it. We never really sat down to explain just what it was that made Warne so special. So one of the chapters is just basically a recreation of his bowling action, from his walk back, through his walk in, through his delivery stride, his follow through and his appeal. And it's amazing how much you could find to say about that and how it changed over the course of his career, because of course he played at the top level. Well, he's still playing. He's been playing since 1992, and his game did evolve, and his personality did expand, and Australian cricket did change, and Australia grew up alongside Warne. And you know, a lot of our relationship to sport and to cricket can be understood via our relationship with this one individual.
Do you ever get sick of watching cricket?
Yeah, I do actually, yeah. And I sometimes get sick of writing about it too, but I never ever get sick of playing it. My wife will tell you, I'm constantly playing phantom shots throughout the house. It's immensely relaxing. I think I probably prefer playing it to writing and watching. I think it is genuinely a player's game, and you can perhaps only really kind of achieve an intimate understanding of it through being a participant.